have a big car or truck, and cruising down the street in your oversized set of wheels is certainly impressive, but that doesn't hold a candle to some of the true vehicular monstrosities man has crafted. Whether on the road, in the air, sailing the seas, or even underground, the ingenuity and practicality of these machines are only overshadowed by their sheer, ridiculous, often record-setting size. Here now are 10 of the biggest vehicles on Earth. Something has to move gigantic space shuttles from one place to another, and that something is the NASA Crawler Transporter. Since the 1960s, the two Crawler Transporters have been used by NASA to transport rockets, shuttles, and other spacecraft from their vehicle assembly building to their launch platform. Once the mission is done, the ginormous crawlers take the spacecraft back to the VAB for safekeeping. An incredible 130 feet long and 114 feet wide, with a curb weight of 6 million pounds, the NASA Crawler Transporters certainly are sights to behold. To this day, they remain the largest land vehicles on Earth that run by themselves. They are by no means the largest land vehicles around. A bucket wheel excavator named Bagger 293 and a power shovel called the Captain are significantly bigger, but everything else is externally powered by something else. Among internally self-powered land vehicles, NASA's shuttle ushers have no peer. Not unexpectedly, the Crawler Transporters have achieved a great deal of fame in their own right. They've been featured on shows like Dirty Jobs, movies like Apollo 13, Transformers: Dark of the Moon, and even video games like Fallout 3. In the latter, which is set hundreds of years in the post-apocalyptic future, scavengers actually built a base on and inside one of the crawlers. All you have to do is look at the size of that thing to realize we could probably do that in real life if we absolutely had to. The name Big Bike is technically accurate, but also the understatement of the millennium. This bike is gargantuan in every sense of the word. In 2014, the Guinness World Records recognized Fabio Reggiani's 2012 creation Big Bike as the largest rideable motorcycle in the world. This phenomenon is 16 feet 8 inches high, weighs over 5.5 tons, and its motor can hold 280 horsepower. For comparison, the average Harley-Davidson boasts between 70 and 85 horses. Riding Big Bike would essentially be like riding a brontosaurus with a rocket strapped to its back. And yes, you can ride it. Kind of. Guinness requires that for a vehicle to be rideable, its driver successfully navigated 100 meters, or around 330 feet. Reggiani did just that, but likely he couldn't have gotten much farther. It's simply too massive, so much so that it requires secondary wheels in the back simply to keep itself upright. Also, imagine riding that thing down the highway and taking up every lane at once, all while trying to hang on to the handlebars that aren't even close to the seat. Still, even if Big Bike is mostly a novelty, it's a fun and amazing one. The Nazis had several grand ideas they simply couldn't pull off, one of which was the Panzer VIII Maus super tank. This weapon, if used against the Allies, might well have turned the war tides in Hitler's favor. Luckily for the rest of the world, the Russians invaded and captured the testing base before the Nazis could execute anything. The Panzer was, to put it lightly, a monster. It measured over 33 feet long, stood almost 12 feet tall, weighed 188 metric tons, and boasted a 128mm gun that could have obliterated any armored vehicle within 2 miles of it, possibly even further. The Panzer was designed to take virtually no damage while on the attack. About its only real weakness would have been its speed, which didn't rise above 14 miles per hour during testing. That speed, by the way, was only achieved by weakening the motor. At top speed, the Panzer barely hit 8 miles per hour. Even still, the Panzer was a nightmare in the making. What's more nightmarish? The Nazis wanted to build 5 of these things. Imagine a scenario where the most evil regime in modern history actually got to fight with such an arsenal. It's a good thing for humanity that Russia got there when they did. You think your truck is big? Yours is nothing compared to the actual largest truck on the planet. A plus-size replica of a 1950s Dodge Power Wagon, commissioned by the UAE's ultra-billionaire Sheikh Hamad. Even the tires dwarf the average person, which is to be expected when the entire truck is over 8 times as large as a regular Power Wagon. At a whopping 50 tons, it's also far heavier than the traditional wagon. It's also roomier, as in you can literally live in it. Hamad had an entire house built into the truck, which boasts 4 bedrooms, all air-conditioned of course, a bathroom, a full kitchen, a living room, and even a patio. If you manage to move in or simply want to visit, you enter through the truck's underside, via steps installed around the engine. That's right, engine. This massive wagon isn't just a truck-shaped house, it actually is a truck. The engine, taken from an earth mover, works, as do the brakes and suspension. Plus, it's 100% street legal. After all, what motor vehicle department is going to tell the Sheikh he can't drive whatever he wants wherever he wants? The mining and construction fields need large trucks for their large jobs, and the Caterpillar 797 series of haul trucks are just that. Meant for heavy-duty mining and construction purposes, a Caterpillar can haul over 360 tons of material at once, placing it among the most powerful hauling vehicles in the world. For years, the second-generation 797B model was Caterpillar's prize product, capable of hauling 345 tons of payload at once, thanks to a 24-cylinder diesel engine packed with 3,550 horsepower. That was certainly impressive enough on its own, but Caterpillar felt they could do better. In 2009, they did just that with the 797F. This Hulk can handle up to 363 tons of payload and is powered by a 20-cylinder engine boasting a whopping 4,000 horses. Thanks to that extra chunk of juice, the 797F can reach speeds up to 42 miles per hour, just as fast as its proud Poppy, but even stronger. Workers certainly aren't complaining, as they can now operate more efficiently and use less fuel, all while sacrificing no time whatsoever. Probably the only thing they want to know is when the next, even stronger 797 model will grace their workstations. When something's named Bertha, chances are it's got some size. The Washington State Department of Transportation's tunnel boring machine named Bertha is no exception. Completed in June 2013, Bertha is 57 feet in diameter and comprised of 41 parts, each one weighing roughly 900 tons. In total, Bertha weighs in at a slim, trim 73 million pounds. She needs all that weight, since her life's purpose is to help complete the 9,270-foot-long Alaskan Way Viaduct Replacement Tunnel. Unfortunately, Bertha has not had the easiest go at her job. After roughly 1,000 feet of boring, she began overheating due to a damaged seal system, which obviously halted production. It took 2 years of repair for Bertha to start up again, but then just a month later a sinkhole opened up and stopped Bertha right in her tracks. A month after, she started working again, but she almost immediately needed more maintenance before starting up yet again in April of 2018. Finally, a year later, Bertha finished her part of the job, and the tunnel is set to be fully operational in early 2019. Thanks to all these delays, the project is estimated to cost $223 million more than expected. Ouch. Bertha may be a tunnel boring machine, and a good one at that, but her adventures on the job were far from boring. Any aircraft meant to airlift military vehicles has to be large, but the Russians almost went overboard with their Antonov An-225 Mriya, affectionately nicknamed Cossack. Even though it was unveiled in 1988, it remains the heaviest aircraft in history to this day. It also retains the title of longest wingspan at over 88 meters because the Russian Air Force did not fool around. Thanks to 6 turbofan engines, Cossack can handle 710 short tons or 630 long tons of cargo. That's the equivalent of roughly 50 cars. This means Cossack easily sets other records as well, such as the record for heaviest single-item payload, 418,830 pounds, as well as total payload, 559,580 pounds. Cossack's original intent was strictly to transport military craft, such as the Buran spaceplane. Once it had done what it was intended to do, the Russians retired it for years. Finally, remembering what they had, they revived Cossack as a commercial carrier for Antonov Airlines. Its new job is to carry extra-large payloads for regular, everyday passengers. That said, should Russia ever find herself looking for help to get out of an international scrap, she needs look no further than their literal heavyweight champion of military aircraft. The upcoming scaled composite Stratolaunch aircraft is nicknamed Rock. It's named after Sinbad's Rock, which in mythology was a bird large enough to carry an elephant. The name fits perfectly because the Stratolaunch, set for a 2019 debut, is going to be absolutely massive. Designed to launch rockets into orbit from 35,000 feet in the sky, Rock will sport a 385-foot wingspan, among the longest ever. It will be able to handle a payload of up to 550,000 pounds and handle a takeoff weight of over 1.3 million pounds. To handle such an incredible workload and simply just to launch itself, Rock will be equipped with an incredible 6 engines. As for takeoff, something this big, carrying such weight, will need far more than the typical runway if it wants to take off. In fact, Rock will require an incredible 12,000 feet of runway to effectively launch. Imagine getting on a plane and speeding through the airport for over 2 miles before entering the air. That will be reality if you ride the Rock. It's impossible to be a supertanker and not be, well, super in size. The TI class of tankers, however, take size to a whole new level. There are actually 4 ships in the TI class of ultra-large crude carriers: TI Africa, TI Asia, TI Europe, and TI Oceania. Each one is a whopping 973 million pounds, making them the largest operating ships in the world. And yet, despite that size, each class can reach between 16.5 and 17.5 knots in speed. That's the equivalent of 19 or 20 miles per hour, which isn't bad at all for ships so big. That said, there are limits to being so big, depending on where you're trying to go. For example, the TI ships are actually wider than the locks in the Panama Canal. so if they want to get through, they'll have to take the long way around. In addition, these supertankers are actually too heavy to navigate the Suez Canal unless they're in the ballast, meaning they have no cargo. The TI class of supertankers might be the largest of its kind in the world, but they're not the largest ever. That would almost certainly be the Seawise Giant, who did not earn that name out of pity. Her weight could exceed 1.2 billion pounds, and her latent draft, or how deep the ship drops when carrying cargo, of 81 feet, meant when not in ballast mode, bodies of water like the English Channel and the Suez and Panama Canals were strictly off limits. The Giant wasn't just the largest supertanker ever, but also quite likely the largest ship ever built, period. The Seawise Giant led quite a life, including a brush with death during the Iran-Iraq War. She was actually sunk in the middle of that conflict, until later being salvaged and fixed up. Given a second chance at service, she lasted a great many years, until finally in 2009 she became the property of Indian shipbreakers, who sailed her to Gujarat and turned her into scrap. Perhaps someday someone will attempt to build a supertanker as large as the Seawise Giant again. But if upcoming vehicles like Rock are any indication, such sheer size might be better reserved for a world that can handle